Which Florida State players will be back from injury in time for the Alabama game?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Florida State is probably one of the middle of the pack teams in the ACC, but should they be higher? We're going to talk about all the predictions in the league, Florida State included. We're also going to talk about the concern, or you got to look at it from the glass half full perspective of all the possibilities for Florida State at the wide receiver position. But to start tonight's show, and for the majority of the show, we're going to talk about injuries, their impact on Florida State and Alabama. They've got a very significant injury to discuss as well. So let's start off with that. Jay Miller, the running back from Alabama, I just want to get this out there, has a problem with his collarbone. It's separated or something. Like, it's a significant injury. He's going to miss several games. He was the starter for Bama for part of last season, and he was a key contributor. The last 4 games, he didn't average 4 yards a carry in any of those games, but he still was a guy that toted the football a lot for Alabama. Just want to mention that. And also looking at their list as a reminder, offensive lineman Jaden Roberts has been banged up some. He may or may not be ready for the game. They've got other guys, Vandermark and some other players that could come into the lineup, but it may not be their first choice. Just wanted to mention those. And I'm sure they've got some other bumps and bruises, but those are a couple of things that I know. As for Florida State, and there are probably others, but Norvell was a little more forthcoming in a recent press conference and just tracking down some other news here. Brock Glenn should be back in practice this week. Here's the question, though. As the backup quarterback, it's about same thing I say all the time. Reps, and more reps. You can never have enough reps. And he's missed the vast majority of camp. So the question, will he be the number 2 quarterback despite his experience? I'm not sure, because coaches, as I often say, are the most stubborn human beings on earth. If you're not in the lineup in practice, etc., they usually don't play you. We'll see what happens, but this could be Kevin Sperry's job as far as the backup for Florida State. It's something to definitely monitor. Squirrel White should be back pretty soon, but he got banged up again. He's been in and out of the lineup since he got at Florida State, and he was banged up quite a bit at Tennessee too. This is a little concerning for me, and it should be for all Florida State fans. Florida State needs Squirrel White healthy for all 12 games. It's probably not going to happen, but they need him to be. It's not the biggest guy, so I understand, but he needs to be healthy. Veteran, very shifty, reliable hands. That's a player Florida State needs in the lineup. I don't know what his ailment is. Florida State doesn't generally give a lot of detail like a lot of schools. But if he's missed a little bit of time in fall camp, that's no biggie. But he needs to be 100% full go. Despite what I said a minute ago about coaches being very stubborn, they got to hold him out. He's got to play the Bama game. Excuse me. No matter what, even if he misses practice, he's got to be the guy. I know that, again, take your stubbornness away. You got to rest him. He's got to be healthy for Bama. No ifs, ands, or buts. Jacob Rizzi has been back. This is funny. Norvell said, we still don't know our starting 5 on the offensive line. I'm calling complete BS on that. I think the 5 was known as soon as the transfer portal was done in the winter when they added 4, and they pretty much knew who the other guy was going to be, a returning guy that was also a transfer. But coaches are always trying to motivate people. And maybe Rizzi could win the job somewhere, but I doubt it. We know who the 5 are going to be, but we need to know who the next guys are. And Rizzi could be one of those players. So getting him back in fall camp is important. Again, kind of like quarterback. O-line is the other spot where you need the most. Guess what? Reps. I hope Rizzi is, because it's going to be so hot in Tallahassee, I hope he's in at least somewhat game shape. He's not going to be in total game shape if he's missed significant time, but hopefully he was able to contribute. He could be on this, not just a few of the special teams, but like he's going to find a way on the field. He's a veteran. He's a guy that's been at Florida State a long time, and good for him for battling back. Also, Gavin Blackwell. I'd mentioned this on the podcast on Saturday, the live show. Florida State, they've got a lot of young receivers, and we're going to talk about that in the second segment extensively. But Gavin Blackwell had kind of disappeared, no discussion. With practice being closed, this is why they do it, because they don't want anybody to know anything. Blackwell had been banged up. But for whatever reason, Mike talked about it openly. Maybe I'd missed that, but I didn't hear anybody say anything in the chat on Saturday. Anyway, getting him back is good. Coach Harris has talked about him and said that he's doing some good things and he's back in the mix, and he was back at the scrimmage. So that is good news. But overall, there's still a lot of guys that have been banged up, and he's just one of them. To the point of the starting five with Florida State, again, I just want to bring this up for the offensive line. Barring something unbelievably surprising, it should be Gunnar Hansen at left tackle, Adrian Medley at right guard or left guard. The guards, I think they switched at one part. I think Richie Leonard's playing left guard now, and it's Medley at right guard. But either way, Luke Pettibone will be your center. He's the guy that transferred in and really took everything by storm in the spring, and they really like him. And then you got Micah Pettis from Ole Miss at right tackle. Again, if anybody, Rizzi included, ends up starting, I would be surprised, but we will see. I don't know who it's going to be. Andre Otto, is it going to be Bryson Estes or anybody else? Mario Nash make a run, Lucas Simmons. Any of these guys could play at some point this year, but we haven't heard enough to think that any of them are, to be clear, truly competing with that starting five. Coaches always lie to the media, and they will always lie to the media in the future too, because they're trying to motivate players. It is what it is. But at the same time, I expect those to be the five starters. When we come back, talking about starters, the wide receiver position is very confusing. And you could argue to me that Florida State is in either a good or a bad position in terms of depth. I think the top of the group, no problems at all. But what about injuries? And you've got to rotate guys. Remember that first game against Bama, 3:30 kickoff. It will be hot. It will be humid in its first game of the year. You're probably going to have guys cramp no matter what you try to prepare. Therefore, they need young receivers to really be ready. Who can Florida State count on? That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where Drip Drop comes into play. With Drip Drop, you've got a situation where doctors developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium, electrolytes, and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. If you're trying to stay hydrated, especially in the heat down in Florida, Drip Drop is a great way to do it. You can take it with you on the go. If you got something going on, you got to get all your routine done, or going to the gym, or anything else. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head over to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I am Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst, bringing you as much Florida State football news as I can. We just talked about the injuries for Florida State. We're getting ready to dive in to the wide receiver situation. I'm going to talk a little ACC to clean up the show at the end. And we still got a lot of time between now and Alabama to talk about depth charts, changing roster positions, what's going on with Bama, point spreads, and everything else. So make sure you stay locked in with Locked On Seminoles. Let's talk about the wide receivers for Florida State. Tim Harris and Coach Norvell have spoken extensively and in a very positive manner about Florida State's growing wide receiver room, and a very, quite honestly, young one. We discussed that coming out of spring, that it was a concern. A lot of guys were banged up. We didn't know what kind of continuity there would be. Deuce, squirrel, different guys in and out of the lineup, etc. And young guys just trying to get their footing. You go through summer conditioning. You go through all the workouts and the 7-on-7s. Nobody gets to see that stuff. So you're still guessing. The positivity that Norvell and Coach Harris, for that matter, have discussed Florida State's wide receiver room gives me some hope. Because we know that Deuce and Squirrel, and it's crazy as it may be, maybe it's because I'm biased towards him because I got to see him play a few times, but Javen Boggs is tremendous. He's not good. He is tremendous with catching the football, different angles, body control, and all that coming out of high school. He's, if I remember correctly, he's the state of Florida's all-time leading receiver at the prep ranks. The state of Florida. And he played at Cocoa. He didn't play at some 1A school and just beat up on little kids. Cocoa is an elite program that plays big boy football. I'm really confident that he's going to either be the starter or co-starter, like a power slot. So that starting three is pretty good. But then that brings in the two questions that go hand in hand. How deep will Florida State be willing to go? Is it 6 guys? Is it 7? Part of that is just wide receiver coach, and all of them are different. How many guys do you want to play? And just to that point, Brian Hartline at Ohio State plays 3 for the most part, occasionally a 4th. He plays the fewest of any team in the country, and they have the deepest wide receiver room. It's bizarre. Why wide receivers continue to go there, I have no idea in terms of how deep they are right now, but I digress. Florida State, how many will it be under Harris? We don't know yet because he's just getting to know these young men. And you got a new coordinator. It's a new outlook. So that's interesting. But you also have to earn it. Just because Harris wants, let's say it was 7, whatever the number is, you still got to get to that point where he trusts each of those players to do all of the following things. Block the way he expects, know the playbook the way Coach Harris expects, understands all the checks the way Coach Harris expects, and then, of course, ball security and just catching the football come into play. And then finally, are you taking practice seriously? How are you doing in the meetings to gain knowledge, film study, and just going through drills? It is a culmination of all of those things. The wild plays that we see occasionally, like Florida State football putting up on X or Instagram, they're all great. But wide receivers have to earn it every single day. So, again, Deuce, Squirrel, and Javen, I think, will be your starters. But is it going to be Elijah Moore or Wayne McCoy, BJ Gibson, Camden Fryer, Gavin Blackwell? And how many of them, I don't want to say interchangeable, how many of them can come in and there really isn't much, if any, drop-off? That is the question of the hour, because you're not going to nickel and dime your way down the field over and over and over again against Alabama. You must be able to drop back and throw the football from the pocket. Now, you can run screens and you can run bootlegs and all that, but at some point you got to have your quarterback hit guys all over the field. And if the most of those plays end up being the starters, that's fine. But what if Deuce has to come out for a series because he takes a big hit or whatever? How many guys do you trust not only to be in the game, but to make a play? I don't have an answer for this. And for those of you Florida State fans out there, this is probably something that many of you talked about this spring on Locked On Seminoles and other places. What is your level of concern for the depth the Noles have, and especially impact depth, not just a warm body? One thing for me to talk about Elijah Moore, and I'm really excited about him just as an example, but is he ready to take that step where you go, if Deuce had to miss half a game, Bama or otherwise, are you confident he could go get you 5 catches and 65 yards? Not even asking for a touchdown. Just could he be consistent like that? I don't know. Especially, again, does he block? Does he run the right routes? Too many times last year, like interceptions and problems, receivers and quarterbacks, they might as well have been one on Mars and one on Jupiter. That's why coaches are really picky about the playbook and understanding checks. You give the other team, especially one like Bama, a free interception, you're signing your own death certificate. Must know the playbook stone cold to be a true difference maker. And some of the other young guys, you may have to play them less because they don't know it quite as well. But that's pretty much what Florida State has outside of Gavin, and he's still a transfer. Florida State's in a very unique situation. But I do offer the following. There aren't just 1 or 2 or 3. Florida State has a bevy of running backs who you could put in the slot or use in the screen game to really help mitigate, and that's good news. Obviously, Jalen Lucas is the first guy to talk about because he is a speed demon. He's twitchy, Nobody wants to play him one-on-one, and I doubt Bama does a lot. He'll be in the slot or trying to catch passes out of the backfield, swing pass, flat pass, arrow over the middle, what have you. I do expect one other thing with that. I expect them to use him in stacked formations and just maybe even as a decoy. Hey, here comes the screen. Here comes that little twitchy guy. Wayne McCoy and guys like that too. But they're going to be able to use their speed at receiver as a weapon, and they don't even have to touch the football. That'll not just against Bama, against every team they play. Florida State has guys that have the athleticism to create movement and even potentially change the defensive play call because they have home run ability. Jalen is one of those guys. Like Lucas is flat out fast as all get out, and he makes the first guy miss. He was an elite return man. He was an All-American when he was in Indiana doing that before he came to the Noles. I would imagine they're going to find a way to use him as a wide receiver. In addition to that, Randy Pittman. Landon Thomas is back. I didn't mention him. I should have. He is back off the injury list, and he played in the scrimmage. And Norvell said he had some really big plays, but he's not in game shape. And you're not going to get yourself in game shape in 2 weeks. You're not. It's just not going to happen. So they're going to probably have to play Pittman more, and he's done all of the following. Lined up as tight end, H-back, and fullback, and then out wide, either slot or out, like truly out wide. He's an extension of your wide receiver group. Big-bodied guy, 6'1", 230, power. He can play running back for you if you need it. So Florida State has options at wide receiver. I still don't know the pecking order, and if you've got a thought on it, fire away. But before we end this segment and start talking about the ACC, the final part of the show, I offer a question. With Landon missing quite a bit of fall camp, let's just be honest, that's not ideal by any means. Do you think Florida State will run more one tight end sets against Bama than they originally planned on? 11 personnel means one running back, one tight end. I thought they were going to run a lot of 12 with Pittman as the second guy to help Boggs get acclimated. So he'd be the guy that comes out. You bring in Pittman or Thomas, whichever one, use basically two tight ends. But I think Landon's play limit will be reduced some. Again, it's a 3:30 kickoff in Tallahassee. That's rough. That's really, really rough. Florida State's going to have to mitigate that in some capacity. So we'll see. So before we go to break, does Florida State run more 11 personnel and really, quote unquote, trust in their young receivers? When we come back, we're going to talk about where Florida State stands in the ACC predictions and what's going to happen headed forward. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in, the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, buying more tickets, get merchandise like shirts or hats, and Gametime makes it very possible for all of that to happen. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually go down as you get closer to the first pitch or any other event you go to. Just check out the app, last-minute seats or last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that makes all of it a lot easier when you go to buy tickets. Now, for me, we're coming into college football season, so I'm looking at football prices all over. I'm curious about it. Florida State, Alabama, and everything else. But we're now into the home stretch of MLB, so make sure you check out those as well. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Florida State football is coming into a season that about anything can happen. And to that, they're going to have to make a lot happen this offseason to take it to the next level. And that's one of the reasons that I started the Portal podcast in addition to Locked On Seminoles to talk about all the different things with the roster management in college football. So after this pod, make sure you check out Locked On the Portal. It's a really cool show that I host here on the Locked On Podcast Network, recruiting, NIL, and the transfer portal, Florida State, and everybody else. As for the ACC, I just want to go over some of the predictions again, kind of talk about it and like, where do you stand? I'm going to give my take, obviously, but comment down below. What do you think about Florida State, where they're going to be in this list of teams? And it's ACC is really hard to predict. Everybody pretty much picked Clemson to win the league out of the media. They got 167 first place votes. Miami was second with 7. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Florida State was 7th at 1920 in terms of total points. Duke wasn't that far ahead of them at number 6 with 1,973. So Florida State's projected to make a bowl, go 7-5, 8-4, somewhere in there. I've got them at 8-4. We'll see. But overall, I think Florida State is a team that is very difficult to predict. So I want to go through about the first 10 or so schools, just in order, and just give some basic comments about why I think they are where they are, what some of these media members are seeing. And if I disagree with something or if I think there's a concern, I will be more than happy to throw it out. Clemson, experience. Got a quarterback that started, Cade Klubnik, since midway through like his freshman year. That's a big deal. They've got a very nasty front, couple of defensive linemen that are going to go the first or second round, and they've got the track record as a team that's been pretty consistent in college football for over a decade. Not been quite as great the last couple of years, but this should be a better group. They got a lot of speed at receiver. Only questions I have, like, is the deep secondary ready? I'm a little iffy on their depth there. Maybe not sure about linebacker depth or whatever. O-line's in a good spot. D-tackle's in a good spot. Running back's iffy too. They moved Randall, a receiver, over to running backs. That concerns me a little bit. Miami. First concern is Mario Cristobal on game day. Prove me wrong, but he's never been a great game day coach. Carson Beck, is his elbow really ready to take hits in his mental mind to handle getting hit? I know he can throw it. I know he understands offense. He's a big guy. Can he take the hits? We'll see. If not, Emory Williams will have to play, and I'm not sure he's ready for that. We'll find out. But they got a great line. They got a good running back room. They got some pretty talented receivers. Tight ends concerning, they lost a bunch. I think the defense will be much better, but it had nowhere to go but up. Their secondary was a sieve. Front seven needs to be more consistent. A little iffy about the middle linebacker, but he has played a lot. So we'll see. But Miami's one of those teams you just don't know week to week. SMU was the third team. And I know they got Kevin Jennings back, but they lost a lot of guys in the trenches. I'm not sure their depth is quite the same. We'll see if they can hit multiple years in a row with portal guys up front. That's hard to do. Ask Florida State. So I think they may be the third best team, but the chemistry up front gives me some pause. And I need to see it happen where they're the hunted and not the hunter and really do well. I'm not convinced on SMU. Georgia Tech, because of Haynes King and a whole bunch of other guys, like Jamal Haynes. I mean, that guy at running back is an animal, but they lost Eric Singleton to Auburn. He got bought off their roster. Their O-line's good. I really like their O-line, but what about the defense? That's the other thing. They just weren't that great up front. Do they have enough guys? They've lost a few key players. I need to see it there too. So Georgia Tech, their team that should have beat Georgia last year, but are they going to be the team that takes a step back? Because again, they're kind of the hunted now. That's not easy to do. Then after that, it's an interesting team. Louisville. They got 2 home run hitters at running back. You got a transfer in at quarterback from USC. You've got a coach in Coach Braum that is known as a very good quarterback coach, but they're transfer heavy. That makes me nervous. They lost one of their D tackles to Notre Dame. They lost a few guys, trying to get to the draft. Are they going to be good enough on defense to warrant a top 5 ACC finish? Possibly, but I trust Braum. In close games, him and Dabo are the 2 coaches I trust the most in the ACC. We'll see, but watch out for Louisville if they figure out the chemistry. They could fall on their face and be 6-6, and it wouldn't shock me, but if they're 9-3, 10-2, finish second in the league, it wouldn't surprise me either. Duke. This is the team that I think is the most underrated of anybody in the league. They're over-under on FanDuel, 6.5 the last I saw. It's pretty low. They've got a ton of guys back on offensive line and defensive line. They're key players. They get the Mensa kid from Tulane, who's really talented. And they've just got a chemistry with their coaching staff. Like the symmetry there helps them. They play for each other. They've got culture. Good for Duke. But now the question is, like everybody else I've talked about here, they are the hunted, not the hunter. How do you handle that? And that new quarterback factor is a part of it. Florida State, we've been talking about them, that this Locked On Seminoles. If I'm looking at it from the outside looking in, quarterback, I'm not sure. Gus, need to see it, work with the new group. Hard to say. O-line obviously is questionable. But it's about the effort and the culture that I would look at overall. That's the biggest question I have, is the culture at Florida State. Too many transfers have been brought in over the last several years. Are they finding a way to get around that this year? I don't know. But if they do, they could surprise some people. If not, it could be 6-6 in an awkward season. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. North Carolina, I am not buying. They're 8th on this list by the ACC media. Bill Belichick, he's got some big bodies coming in. He's got the kid coming in from South Alabama at quarterback, Gio. Like, he's a good player. But where are the playmakers? Who's going to make the plays on offense in crucial games? And secondarily, they lost Bo Atkinson, their defensive end, to Ohio State. Do they have the defensive secondary, really, to compete with the upper echelon ACC teams? I'm not buying that. Pitt, I'm just not buying in general. I think they will be decent, and they will be the ultimate, if you don't show up, they'll punch you in the mouth team, but they'll lay a couple of duds this year. Pat Narduzzi's teams aren't talented enough to play the way they do. They're very conservative offensively overall. I need to see it. NC State, they do have their quarterback back. They're the 10th team. That'll be interesting. But I just don't think they're the same level of program they were. Their recruiting's fallen off just a little bit. D-line will be good, but running backs got some talented guys. Linebacker, iffy. That's probably their biggest hole. Depth on the D-line, maybe. We'll see. I don't know much about their secondary this year, but I do know they lost a key player to transfer. Final team I'm going to mention here is Virginia Tech. If Coach Pry doesn't figure it out, he's going to get fired. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Truly appreciate you tuning in. Hit that like and subscribe. Share this podcast. And if you get a chance, hit the automatic download on Apple, Spotify, wherever you're at. Truly appreciate that as well. We will see you again soon on Locked On Seminoles.